And here we go. Hello, everybody. We are streaming live from who knows where. It doesn't matter. Let me get our web chat going. Kaboom. Hopefully, everybody is able to chat in where you are, what you're doing, who you're sitting next to. I don't know. Chat in something. Chat in
That's
what
right.
your crazy calling is. Because today we are talking about uh, are you going to answer your calling before somebody else does? And I think if you're a Wayseer type, you've experienced this before. You have that great idea, that phenomenal creative impulse. Something comes to you, like it's a song, it's a sound of music that you could create. It's an entrepreneurial idea. It's an invention, and you're like, oh, and you're called to it, and you're ready to go with it. And maybe even you start pursuing it, but then something distracts you, something pulls you away, and next thing you know, a year or 5 years later, whoa, there's somebody who is running with that great idea you had, that great creative impulse that you had. Somebody else is doing it. What
which
happened
is
there?
which is terribly painful, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a subject close to your heart, Garrett. Like I feel like you and I have had this discussion many times where like you're like, I freaking
Yep.
had that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only had that idea, but often like started that company, started doing that thing, and then, stuff got difficult, and or bills got had to be paid, or something got in the way that diverted me from really pursuing that all the way to its end. And then you're like, "Ah, dude, that dude on stage at Coachella, not the kid yodeling, but others are just like doing something really similar to what you were working on, or that startup that just, became worth $100 million or got acquired for 500 million. It was doing what you started working on, or that invention that you had that you could have patented, but you didn't, like now is out there, making billions, whatever it is. Like there's
Yeah.
all these wonderful, great creative ideas that are probably haunting you if you're a creative type. And the funny thing about them is they're not just your ideas. They are, I believe, the great ideas come from what Plato called the realm of ideals. And this is kind of like this heavenly realm that it's like a dimension that's above and beyond our four dimensions, where all the perfection of things exists. Like the perfect end result of everything is there. So Plato talked about it as like the perfect chair, the perfect table, stuff like that. Dude was living in a time where a chair and a table was actually kind of like technology. Um, but nowadays, like the perfect new invention, that perfect next thing, that perfect song, it all exists with the choir of angels up in the realm of ideals. And those ideas, those divine inspirations, that creative genius is there flowing in this current that your mind as a creative type, as a wayseer, is open to, and you'll start picking up those wonderful creative inspirations. You'll have glimmers, you'll see these beautiful ideas, these beautiful creations, and you're called to manifest those, to bring those into this world, to take this idea from on high and bring it down, and do all the sort of grunt work, roll up your sleeves and make it exist in this world, and to come into alignment with that beautiful flow of creativity. Like that's your opportunity. But all too often, and I say this from experience, we choose not to. We get distracted with worldly things, with obligations, with our fears, with our preoccupations, with our addictions, whatever it is, and turn our backs on this divine flow of inspiration, thinking that it's kind of like exclusively ours. Oh, that's my idea. No one else has it. Like I had that idea myself, so it must be private to my own mind. The truth is, it's not. It's like this public thing that's up for the grabs for anyone who wants to tune into that frequency. And if you tune into it and stay tuned into it long enough, stay devoted to it, and become a worthy custodian of the birthing of that creative impulse, that idea, that creative inspiration, then you also experience the boon of having brought that into the world, and people, put you up on stage, give you lots of fame, money, whatever it is, awards, and even if none of that happens, even if you die broke, it's like you feel, like Van Gogh, that Starry Night, that beautiful painting actually does. Hey, all right. Um, Somebody just joined us on Twitch, which is cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this is the thing. We're all kind of open to this. I feel like I want to call it almost like the choir of angels, but it's like this heavenly, divine inspiration. It is this. It's the source of where genius comes from, and it's the thing that if you tune into it, you will create heaven on earth for yourself and for others too, because they'll get to experience that glimpse of heaven that you're experiencing. But if you think like, oh, that's my great idea, or that's my great song lyric, or that's my great like music style that no one else is going to figure out, wrong. I think, if you're having that inspiration right now, there's probably a dozen other people out there around the world who are also experiencing it, and at least that. And then it's really a matter of who really becomes a custodian, a keeper of that flame, and brings it into the world. So that's the initial rant. What do we got? What do we got in terms of comments? Anything?
So juicy. Yeah, Nikayla says, this happens to me all the time. Over time, it causes me to just give up and say, well, I guess I'm not as original as I thought I was.
Yes. Let's talk to let's talk to that one, because that's the thing. It's incredibly demoralizing when you do have that big inspiring idea, and then you let enough time pass, and then somebody else does it, and you go, oh, that was my thing. And you feel like, well, I'm not original and I'm a failure and all that. No, that was a beautiful wave that you could have caught. And for whatever reason, you didn't paddle hard enough, or you didn't paddle at all, and you didn't catch the wave. And then you see somebody else catch that wave, and you're like, whoa, like, I don't know. There's that feeling like, I missed that wave. Well, there's like always another wave. And if you're a good surfer, you will catch the wave, but you got to paddle hard, and you got to try to catch that wave, and you got to pick that next wave, and you got to stop worrying about the wave you missed. So there's probably been dozens of waves that you've missed, and there's probably one or two of them that you were so close to catching that you're like fixated on it. For me, one of those waves was Bitcoin. Like, I had the impulse, not only impulse, but the determination to buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin when it was $8. And I went to my, it's like, at the time you had to get into this thing called Mt. Gox to trade your Bitcoin, or to buy into Bitcoin. And Mt. Gox was a place for like trading Pokemon cards. Like, that's originally what it was. And then they started letting you trade Bitcoin. And I'm going to go put $10,000 in that. Like, people thought I was crazy, but I was like, no, I'm doing it. And the way you get money into Mt. Gox at the time is you had to use MoneyGram. And like, the only places that had MoneyGram were like CVS's and like Tedeschi's, like these kind of like shady establishments where you don't feel really comfortable bringing $10,000 and plunking it on the the Quickie Mart's counter and being like, here, take my money. I'm gonna hope this money ends up where it belongs. But I tried to do it anyway, and every single place I went to, the MoneyGram was broken or discontinued or not working, or they didn't know how to use it. And I eventually got distracted, had to pay the mortgage, had a startup I was working on that took all of my attention, and I didn't follow through. So what did I lose from missing that wave? Just $20 million.
No big deal.
No big deal. That would have been worth $20 million. Oh, well, ouch.
Yeah, that one hurt. That
hurts. And I'm still like, whenever I'm feeling squeezed for money, or like people are kind of bugging me in a way that distracted me from making that investment, I start yapping on about how I missed the Bitcoin wave. And I still want to get it. But it's like, I can't get it. That wave is gone. That ship has sailed. But it's not the last ship. There's always another ship. There's always another wave. And the question is, can you let go of those waves you've missed, summon the presence of mind and heart and spirit to see where your best next wave is coming. So it might not be the very next one coming. It might be that one off in the just that swell off in the distance. So you say, that one's for me. I can see that's a big one, and I like the shape of that one. I like where that one's going, and I want to be part of that. So find that wave. Focus on that wave. Think about where you want that wave to take you. So if there is a kind of life that you want to live, a kind of calling you want to answer, something you can throw your whole heart and soul into, it's like make sure that wave is taking you in that direction, because there's always the small waves that are doing something you could grab onto. And the truth is you don't like where they're going enough to really paddle hard enough, long enough to catch that wave. So if that's the wave that you're looking at, realize like every wave takes a lot of effort to paddle hard enough to get right on that crest, to pop on that board, to maintain your balance, to face the fear of falling, and to ride that wave. All that takes a ton of your attention and life force and intention and presence. And so if you're not willing to make those sacrifices for that particular wave that you see coming, fuck that wave. There'll be a different one. Find the wave you're willing to sacrifice for. Find the wave you're willing to see through to the end, and then commit to it. Really commit to it. And then ride that wave into glory. Like that's the awesome opportunity, is that wave, if you really go for it, will take you to the promised land, will take you to glory. It is the expression of heaven on earth, answering your soul's calling, catching that wave of spirit that will take you to glory. And that is everyone's opportunity, and that is all of our opportunities all day long, every day, is to be catching those waves to like this higher place, this higher realm, this greater love, this greater majesty of light and wonder and creativity and aliveness. And how are you going to find it? Where is it for you? That's what we're talking about today.
I love it. That's so good, because I was actually going to ask you how, like, if you're a person who has ideas all the time, which a lot of your people are, like, how do you know which idea to pick? But it sounds like what you were saying is pick the one that you'll go balls out for, that you will commit to, that really is almost like worth that energy and investment and intention, and then ride it all the way home.
Yeah. Yes. And make sure it's kind of far out enough for you. So somebody here is saying, my thing lately has been wanting to invest in marijuana. Still taboo and not sure where to start investing. Well, I don't think it's taboo at all anymore. It was taboo when it was against the law. Now it's basically legal in I don't know if it's legal in most states, but it's pretty darn legal, and everybody recognizes it's basically going to be very legal very soon. So is that taboo? Is that the next wave, or is that a wave that's already happening? And is there room for you to invest in it? So now what you want to find is like, what part of that wave can you carve out for yourself? Think of yourself on this beautiful Hawaiian beach with giant swells and giant waves, and there's hundreds of people in the water all trying to catch that next wave. So, or thousands even. That's what this like marijuana wave is thousands and thousands of people all trying to catch that wave. Well, you don't have to, own the whole wave. You just need that little part of the wave that you can surf, where you're not going to bang into somebody else and both of you get shipwrecked. So look for that, and it might not be marijuana. It might be something that's in alignment with the spirit that causes you to want to invest in it. And taboo, fuck taboo. Today, there's nothing like, if you're getting hung up on taboo today, and I get hung up myself sometimes, because there's a lot of stuff that you're like, whoa, that's really taboo. But that's like, all the taboos are just gonna get vanquished. I mean, I think I don't think there's any more taboos. There's some taboos that are left that will probably not be vanquished, but for the most part, if you're into something that's healthy, that is not hurting anybody, that is, good for the heart, soul, spirit, and body, hopefully. And if it's taboo, fuck it. It's not, that taboo's not going to last. Now, if it's hurting somebody, or it's not good for you in some way, then that taboo may last, just because people are smart enough to say, this taboo should stay in place because it's not a good thing to be involved in. So
A couple people are actually chatting in some interesting things, like they're sort of addressing mindset issues, like things that would keep you from riding a wave. So Cheryl says, I don't know what scares me the most, the initial rejection or the later being rich and famous. And then Sean says, the waves cost money. If you don't have money, you get nowhere. I tried so hard to make it and I got sick and lost everything. So I don't know. I feel like it's good that these things are coming up because I feel like these are oftentimes the things that keep people from following their inspiration or jumping on the wave, or even believing that if they jumped on the wave that it would necessarily go somewhere they want to be, you know?
all right, let me hit the money one just because that's the one that I remember now. So yes, if your wave costs a lot of money to do, you want to open a mall, you want to start a rocket company or a car company, yeah, you're going to need a lot of money to do that. And the people who get to surf those waves are experienced surfers with sponsors. Those are the biggest waves out there. So if you want to go catch the biggest waves out there like Elon Musk is doing, you need like 3 really successful startups under your belt, or at least 2. I mean, Elon Musk had a successful startup, can't remember the name of it, then PayPal, and then he started sinking his money into the big waves. So you probably need to start with the smaller waves where you can bootstrap it, you can crowdfund it, Kickstarter, crowdfunder, Patreon. I can't remember what all the Indiegogo. You know, if your idea is good enough that you can just pitch it and people want to buy it, which is basically what crowdfunding is, then you're off to the races. And that's kind of like first wave. So friends and family and Kickstarter, Indiegogo, if you got a good enough idea and you're good enough at selling it, which is the prerequisite to having a successful startup. So even if you were given $1 million for your good idea, but you're not good at selling it, you're going to just burn through that $1 million and never sell your idea to the public effectively because you're not good at selling it. And if you are good at selling it, then you can sell it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever, and people will buy it, and you're off to the races. So, you know, don't let money be a thing that gets in your way, but also if the kind of idea you're having is a $100 million idea, realize that it can be very difficult to raise that kind of money. And unless you're good at doing something like that, you might want to start smaller, build up a track record, and let the bigger waves be caught by you in the future when you've got the practice, the ability, the confidence, the backing to catch those big waves.
Yeah, I actually think this is an interesting one because it's like, I feel like oftentimes, you know, like this whole thing is like when your soul is calling, you know, like do you pick up or does somebody else pick up? I feel like sometimes our soul will lead us towards something that will support us in the type of evolution we're meant to have. So it's like, I feel like, yes, it's frustrating when you don't have the capital to get this party started. And I feel like there should be almost like a higher level of commitment to the creation for the sake of creation, or for the art for the sake of the art, outside of like making a buck. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, because the truth is like what your soul wants is to evolve. And so you might have to like get creative to get funding like Garrett's talking about, or you might need to like take a risk on yourself to gain some confidence and become the newest version of yourself. Like, I feel like that money one, while it's a valid limitation, I feel like it's really easy. So to this person who's bringing it up, I would just say, Sean, like, really maybe focus more on like, what is your soul looking to achieve here? Like, what is your soul looking to get out of creating this cool new idea? Because it's possibly worth you just like figuring it out. Like what Garrett was talking about, like, let's just figure it out. Like, let's get there. But like, you have to like want to, or have the commitment to ride that wave before you're going to even, you know, put your foot in the water. So yeah, that's just to bring some attention to like the soul's desire in all of this, you know?
Yeah, I want to go there more with you, Shereen. The soul's desire, and with Mary's question, would love to know my calling. Uh, the soul's desire is to return home to oneness, to God, to heaven. It's like we are at our core, at our souls, like part of this ineffable heavenly existence that we're separated from. And the idea of heaven, I feel like, is this teleological existence. It exists, but in the future. Like, I think there is a light at the end of time that is when everything finally comes together, when all of the creations have been made, when heaven has been manifested in the physical universe, and the physical universe becomes like a perfect reflection of, let's say, heaven on earth. But what that really means is that this realm of ideals has been perfectly reflected into the realm of physicality. So there's all of these beautiful creations that we are capable of as human beings, and where those creations, I believe, come from is this realm of ideals, this heavenly realm, this place that we hail from as souls, as spirits. It's like the fall. If you look at the fall of humankind, the fall of man in all of the Genesis stories, all of the origin tales, it's like we were there with God, perfect oneness and happiness and joy, and then something evil happened and we were cast into this dark universe to fend for ourselves, to fight each other for survival, and all the shit hits the fan down here and we have to kind of wallow in it. Yes, that's true. And we come with the memory of the divine, the memory of that heavenly place where we came from, that Garden of Eden, that realm of ideals. And in that memory is like a lifeline, like a phone line, like a connection, like a tether, that where we can still receive the inspiration, the ideas from this higher realm of how we can transubstantiate the world that we experience around us into something more heavenly, more like where our soul feels like it belongs, where love lifts us up where we belong. That lifting is just creating in this world, in this physical existence, things that reflect more and more closely to the heavenly realm, the realm of ideals. And as we progress that way as humankind, technology all around us, the technology and creativity starts to reflect that of heaven on earth. So if you look at cathedrals and all the beautiful things that human beings have created, all the great art and all the, even things like, some of our smartphones and devices and what we do at our rock concerts and at like Coachella, the light shows and things like that. It's like music festivals, you name it. There's all of these human creativities where it's like there's a little glimmer of like, that kind of reminds me of what heaven must be like. And that is what we're all called to. And that is, I think, in its perfection, waiting for us at the end of time, calling to us, gravitating us towards it. And then your opportunity is not to figure out what your special calling is, but more to realize that you are being called to this heavenly existence, and that heaven resides inside of you, and that out of that calling that we all have towards heaven, wherever you are in life, so your special position at this moment in life there's a direction towards heaven from where you are. So wherever you find yourself, it's like there is an inner direction, an inner creativity, an impulse that takes you closer to a more heavenly existence, a more heavenly surrounding environment, whatever. You can create something that makes the world exactly as you find it, where you are right now in the world. There's something that you can create, that you can do, that you can express, that makes it more heavenly. And that is your calling, wherever you find yourself.
I love that so much, Garrett. Because I feel like sometimes there isn't like a specific function. Like for me, like I grew up, like my whole thing is like, oh, awaken the rebel, like be this like artist or creative type or business owner, even if you were told you're supposed to be like this like doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? So now here I am, like bajillions of years later, I'm like married, I got kids, I'm doing my business. There's not really a place in my business for art. Like it doesn't, like I'm a coach or I'm a speaker, it's not like art doesn't really fit in, right? But I sort of felt called to join this like 6-month mastermind called Red. It's not even a mastermind. It's like a thing called Red. We meet once a month and like half of the chicks perform each month. So the first meeting, I was like, I don't need to perform. I'm just here for like sisterhood, you know, like I'm just here for like somewhere to like, I don't know, create space for myself outside of my family and whatever. Second time I performed, and like, I didn't really know what the hell I was going to do. I just improv'd. I went up there and I did like a mini 5-minute one woman show, like from my childhood all the way up to high school, because that's as long as I could get with my little 5 minutes, right? So I started as a fetus in my one woman show. Now, don't worry, Beard, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. So I like curled up in this little ball, and then I started to like boom, like bang on the floor, boom, like, because when I was a fetus, my dad was like beating up my mom. Ooh. And so I know it's terrible. So like I was sort of just like, I wasn't thinking, I was literally improvising. I just like started there, and then I went through like the rest of my life through high school and how I danced and I sang, and my mom didn't approve. And I gotta be honest, even though there's no function in my family life or my business for art or performance, I can honestly say that that moment of like doing the weird pounding, you know, like as the fetus, has really made me sort of like open the door to a little bit of healing. Like, so I think sometimes you're like inspired towards something, you want to do something. Maybe it's not going to make you money right away. Maybe it will. Who freaking knows? But like, you kind of just have to go there. And I feel like that's what you're talking about. Of like, there is sort of an ascension that is meant to happen for you to get you a little bit closer to your heavenly self, or this heavenly place, or this heavenly realm. And I feel like me going back into my weird, you know, possible, or like, I don't even know what that does to a fetus. I don't know, you know, there's no like science around like how that would affect someone, but me going there through art has sort of helped heal something, which I'm certain will bring me closer to where I am truly meant to be. So I feel like sometimes it doesn't always have to just be so functional, like, oh, I'm going to create a startup and a business that's going to make sense and it's going to make money. Like, yes, that might be it. And I think that's amazing. And yet sometimes you kind of need to follow like the impulses of your soul, or where your heart is bringing you, or where your art is bringing you, because that is sort of part of the healing that brings you to what you're talking about, Garrett, which is like that heavenly place that we are meant to be.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I mean, that is beautiful. And yes, you know, the calling, your soul's calling is like, oh my God. I mean, it's like, that is such a powerful notion of you remember on this deep, deep level, the pounding sound as your mother's being beaten while you are in utero, and you at that level still knew this is fucked up. Something's bad. You know, her heart is racing. I'm getting cortisol in my bloodstream. Like, you know, this is, we're hitting turbulence here, and you don't know why, but that it was so deep in you, and that you were able to access that just through that creative impulse. Like, that is the juice of life. That is what we really all are called to do, is to heal our existence and our world through these miraculous impulses, these creative impulses, these miracle impulses. It's like, that is the thing that calls you towards the healing. It's that impulse. And then you've got the calling. Now, will you answer it? And often we have a bunch of defenses up, societal conditioning and fears and shames that prevent us from trusting those impulses, from following those creative, miraculous impulses. And you followed it, and there was great healing there. You answered the call. And that's the hero's journey, is just answering the call. And the archetypal hero's journey always has the refusal of the call first, which shows that we're all pretty terrified of answering our true callings, because our true callings take you right to real. They go right from all the distracted, deluded defense mechanisms that we live in on a day-to-day basis, conforming to society and whatnot, and just kind of in this fog of this myopic hypnosis that keeps us away from the stark terror that we are these little mortal creatures who will die someday, who will experience great loss, who are completely vulnerable to the elements and to a million different threats to our existence, and yet somehow our opportunities to take these few precious decades we might get and make something beautiful of them. And that is like a starkly terrifying awareness to have. But when you are trusting your creative impulse, you frankly don't give a fuck. You're just so happy to be trusting that miraculous impulse, to be expressing the boom on the walls of your mother's uterus that you felt. It's like that primal expression, or that soulful expression, is so pure and so great and so transcendent that your mortality pales in comparison of it. Like the mere opportunity to express that transcends all the fear and smallness of your mortality. It's like that one opportunity to express that satisfies your soul on some deep level and says, this existence was worth it because I transcended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like sort of depressing, but like anytime I'm doing like coaching or like even executive coaching, like somehow I always bring up death. Like I'm always like, you're going to die. Like there's going to be a day where you die. So what's it going to take for you to look back and be proud of the way you lived? And that always really gets people having a lot of perspective about the ways they're living, because it's so easy to get into our noise or our rat race or just like our just hamster wheel of life and forget that there's just something so beautiful here in this life for us. Like if we focus on just being comfortable or not feeling the discomfort of what it might require to go there, then yeah, certainly we'll be comfortable and it'll be chill, but we might not be proud when we get to the end of our life. And I think that's something that everyone's afraid of. In fact, there was a book called The Number One Regret of the Dying. This nurse who was like a hospice nurse wrote it, and she just was always next to people on their deathbeds, and she listened to what they said. And the top regret of the dying is, I wish I would have lived my life more true to myself rather than sort of succumbing or submitting to like other people's expectations. So this is like a legit problem, you know. This is like, you know, we have to really truly follow our impulses, and like Wayseers and like all your community, like we're crazy impulsive idea like machines, you know. So I just feel like as long as we can tune in to our truth and follow it, we're going to be pretty solid.
Yeah. And you know, like you were saying, and Martin Luther King said, you're not truly living until you have found something you're willing to die for. So it's like that's where you know you've really got it. That death is no longer the worst thing in your mind, that there is something worse, which is not answering that calling that you've discovered. You know, some little poem I wrote a long time ago said, you know, our greatest fear is not death or suffering or any of that stuff. It's that we will neglect to answer our greatest calling. Like that is our greatest fear as a soul, because that is our assignment as a soul, is to keep answering those callings towards a greater heaven on earth, towards a greater healing. So you come into this world, and like you were describing, Shereen, even in the womb, like shit's pretty fucked up, like right out of the gate, right? So you're coming in, shit's all fucked up, everything's sideways, and like, is this your fault? Is this your problem? It is your problem. Is it your fault? Not really. Like you just got incarnated, right? Now some would say, well, this is karma or whatever. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Point is, you're coming in as a sort of, if it was meant for us to feel like this is our fault, I think we would come in with memory of how we caused the shit to happen in some past life. But we come in without those memories, because I think it's really for us to come in fresh and to say, okay, all this shit is sideways. What can I heal? What can I fix? What beauty can I bring to the situation? How can I make this environment, this world, this family, this planet, whatever it is, wherever it is you find yourself, how can I make this more true to what I know in my heart and soul is the heavenly state? And when you do that, yeah, there might not be, you know, you might not see how you're going to make money from it right away, or anything of that sort. And that's not the point, because all money is just one slice of what heaven is. So money, or having plenty of money, is just having abundance. And we all, you know, you don't think of people starving in heaven or sweating bullets because they can't make the rent payment, or, you know, how are we going to pay for the food on our table? You don't think of that as a heavenly state. There's no scarcity in heaven. So one aspect of heaven is that there's abundance. But does that mean that you should just chase that one aspect of heaven? No, your calling in heaven is a much fuller expression, and it fills all of your needs of belonging, your needs of relationship, your needs of expression, your needs of self-actualization, your creative needs, your sexual needs, your relationship needs, your money needs, your food needs. All of your needs are handled in the heavenly state. All you have to do is create that heavenly state. Keep chasing heaven. Keep chasing that higher transcendent state, and then all else will be added on to you. So that's the quote from the Bible. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added on to you. So don't worry about the money. Worry about the kingdom of heaven. How do you start creating that kingdom of heaven in your life, seeking that first, chasing that first, answering that calling first, and then all else will be added on to you. Doesn't mean quit your day job. Doesn't mean get irresponsible. It just means seek first the kingdom of heaven, do the heavenly work in your life, and that little doorway that you open, that little glimmer of light that you bring into your existence will then shine into all the other facets of your life and illuminate your life in a greater way than you could ever expect. And that money, that support, that thing you need, that access you need, that miracle you need will happen because you've devotedly given yourself to that calling to heaven.
I love that. There was actually someone who chatted and asked, like, is there any literature that you can recommend around this stuff, like how to open your heart or how to really get closer to that little piece of heaven?
Okay, so probably the greatest piece of literature I could point to that I think talks about this kind of principle in detail would be A Course in Miracles. And A Course in Miracles is all about seeking heaven. Now, some people may disagree with how it came into this world. Others may disagree with what's the source of this text. But A Course in Miracles fundamentally is like, how do you create more heaven in your life? How do you bring heaven to earth? How do you bring earth to heaven? How do you surrender all the blocks in you to the experience of love and heaven? So now, it's a pretty dense book, but you asked for it, so there you go.
There you go. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So what do we got next?
So, I mean, what do we do if we miss a wave? Like, you know, like you missed the Bitcoin wave. Like, what do we do if we miss it and we regret it? Obviously, we're not supposed to dwell, but like, how can we help ourselves not dwell? Because it's clearly disappointing when we miss those moments, as you know, from personal experience.
and Jesse just threw out there, Course in Miracles, good for starters, Love 101. Jesus Christ. If you can completely understand A Course in Miracles and internalize it, holy shit. Like, that is beyond love. If that's Love 101, we're all fucking... Well, I guess we're all in kindergarten. Love 101 is the first year in college. Okay, we're all in kindergarten here. We got a ways to go. That book is, if you can really internalize those teachings and manifest them in your life, God bless you. If that's 101, we have a long way to go as a human. Why not? That's great. I mean, that'd be great. If that's just 101, why not? We could always go higher. But holy Christ, that's a high bar for a 101.
You're just like so basic, Garrett. Like, you're only recommending Love 101 books. I mean,
yeah. It's like 1,000-page book with a year-long curriculum in it. You know, 101.
Wow. 101.
All written in Shakespearean blank verse, by the way.
Stop it.
By a scribe who was an atheist who claimed she was hearing Jesus Christ's voice dictating to her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, she was an atheist. And she was like, yeah, but this dude Jesus is telling me to write this book.
Seriously? That's really? Oh, I have to read this book. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
And not only did she, write this book, but it's like she wrote it in Shakespearean blank verse. Like, that's
Yeah.
that's like the most elevated form of poetic writing you can write in, and the whole fucking 1,000-page text is written in Shakespearean blank verse. It's insane. It's like, you know,
Wow.
yeah.
Is it so bad that I want to know if they have it on audible.com?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Can I listen to Shakespearean beauty for 1,000 pages while I do dishes?
Probably by like some miserable old fuck reading it to you. You know.
Oh,
I mean, that's the funny thing about it is like these types of books do tend to attract the people who may need them in the weirdest ways the most. So I can't say that the audiobook's going to be anything stellar, but what I could say is that yeah, it's imagine this. Imagine you're just like, okay, you don't believe in God. You're a renowned psychiatrist working at Columbia University as a researcher, and you get like these crazy dreams, and then you hear this voice in your head saying, "This is a Course in Miracles. Please take notes. It is a required course. Only the time you take it in is up to you." You're like, what? What? Who said that? Fuck off.
uh-oh. Jesse says you can laugh. Studied for 2 years, not trying to be a smartass. It's good. It's just not the best. And then you put law1.org again.
I've read both Law of One and Course in Miracles, and I have to say that although Law of One is definitely much more interesting because it gets into like ancient Egyptians and aliens and all this like weird crazy shit.
Oh, wow.
I think and it talks about like, and I think both of them are actually very hugely informative. Like even if you just take them as works of art, it's just like this work, a work of art. Even if like you look at Star Wars, right? You don't have to believe that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker exist for the dynamics of their relationship and their story to move your heart and soul to a point that you've been informed and enriched and enlightened by watching that Star Wars movie. I think the same goes for Law of One or A Course in Miracles. You don't have to believe that Jesus Christ like was dictating A Course in Miracles to an atheist psychologist who was a Columbian psychology researcher, but it helps. It helps. It helps make it magical. Law of One had some far out shit in it, and I totally like. I gotta say this. Like, there was nothing. There was some moments of Law of One I was like, what? But then there was there was a lot of it that's like intriguing and like, okay, I could expand my mind enough to entertain that notion. And I think one of the coolest notions of Law of One is that we are on this third density planet, which is like obsessed with power right now, but we're making the transition to a planet that is focused on love, where love is, so it's like we're moving from like the third chakra to the fourth chakra as a planet. Mm-hmm. And that there are these spirits, these souls that are called the Wanderers that have come down from fifth dimensional being, which is like way beyond where planet Earth is right now, and having chosen to incarnate at this time to help boost up the planet from third to fourth, from power focused to love focused, right?
Oh, wow.
Now, these Wanderers sound very much like Wayseers.
I was gonna say.
Yeah. Or like indigo children, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so I gotta say like that's a really powerful notion. And I do like kind of lean on that at times. I'll go say, yeah, like this is why a lot of people I just can't relate with. Like, why the fuck would you be obsessed with like holding up bricks of cash on Instagram and showing off your gold teeth and your gold rings with your Lambo in the back? Like, what the fuck is this, dude? Like, it just seems like the nursery school of the soul. Like, this is like what children do, to flex their money. It's like, it just seems like so basic. And yet that is a huge percentage of the population is just like, dude, let me flex my wealth. Let me show you how much material I've accumulated. And it's like, dude, but that's all dirt. That's all just dirt. That's none of that is of the soul. And then you see these beautiful creatures who are moving from that to love focus. And yet I still got to say, it's like, these people who are really manifesting themselves as fourth dimensional beings, moving from the power focus to the love focus. Beautiful, beautiful creatures, but sometimes even trying to relate with them, it's like feels like relating. No offense intended, but it's like the way you relate to your dog. It's like your dog is pure love, right? It's like you love your dog, and your dog is like better than you in many ways because it's like so much more devoted and full of love. But it's also like you can't speak the same language a lot of times. Like there's things that you're aware of that you can't like express to your dog, and it's just like there is this disconnect. And I think that's where the wanderers feel very disconnected from the rest of humanity. Is like we're here with the knowledge and the resources and the inspiration to make Earth a more heavenly place, and that's a gradual move. And that move right now is moving from a power focused, power obsessed planet that's burning itself up to a love focused planet that's really based on devotion. And one of the cool things that Law of One does say is that your job is to, if you want to make it to the graduation where it's like there's going to be like this, in this Law of One, they talk about this kind of moment in time where everyone who has managed to serve others at least 51%, with 51% of their being, right, gets to stay in the love focused planet Earth, like the new Earth, right? Like that's the new, like the graduation day. Everyone who's, you know, been of service to others, who has devoted themselves to others, who is full of love enough that 51% of their being is in service to others, you get to stay on the planet. Everybody who doesn't make the cut, you get pushed somewhere else. Like, you know, we're going to go fuck up some other planet with your souls until you graduate. I mean, it's a really interesting far out shit. And it's kind of like, yeah, okay. So I'll ask myself sometimes, like, now, the other thing is, like, even if you're a wanderer, you could come down and get yourself enmeshed enough in all the karma and bullshit that you actually get downgraded back to, you know, third or fourth level existence. So it's like, if you're, as a wanderer, not at least 51% devoted to service to others, like you yourself could find yourself getting downgraded to the 3D, third dimensional planet. I mean, it's all really far out shit. I'm not saying I necessarily buy all of it, but it's really interesting to think about. And I think it's like, makes you go, oh yeah. I probably should be a little bit more generous and of service to others. Even in your creativity, you know, it's like, are you bringing forth all the heaven you could be bringing forth as your inspired being? Like, if you're a wanderer, fifth dimensional creature, coming down to heaven like an angel to help everybody move the planet more towards love, like, are you doing your work? Are you at least 51% devoted to making that happen?
Speaking of which,
yeah,
there was someone who chatted much earlier in the live stream saying, hey, I'm a big fan. When's your next video coming out? So when's your next infusion of love, Garrett?
Busted. I've been avoiding that like the plague. I apologize.
Ooh, only at 49%, brother.
Well, I mean, okay, so I did make this, I did make this Oprah 2020 video, which I felt called to do, but I missed the wave, I think. I was called to do it for weeks and weeks, and then finally Oprah did that Golden Globe speech, like 6 weeks after I was originally called to make that video, and I'm like, oh, shit, I really should make that video. So I did it, and then it took me another couple of weeks. I think I missed that wave, and so that video didn't really go anywhere.
Okay.
But, next video, like I think we're making, this comes to our connection challenge, like that is like, I think this next video is gonna be basically on this topic. It's gonna be like, are you loving with 51% of your being? Thank you, Law of One. Who was that? Jesse, who was talking about the
Jesse.
Law of One? Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. Like, I think, that we could bring out that topic, the connection. Are you, are you bringing more love into this world, and how? Or we could get into some wanderer stuff, or I could do both. And I just got to find a way to make these videos more quickly. They're a little cumbersome to make. right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. We'll talk about that.
yeah,
That's, that's a geeky strategy type stuff.
yeah,
But someone had an interesting question. They said, so then do you think adversity, like homelessness, is almost good for us because then we aren't just like basically working to like pay for and be focused on our own self? I thought that was an
yeah.
interesting thought, honestly.
Yeah. There was a great poem by, I think it was Milton Else Burroughs, or it was oh fuck, no, it was Bukowski, and in that poem he says, you know, when you're really going for, when you're really answering the calling, you will suffer all sorts of things. You will sleep out in the cold on a park bench. You know, you will suffer homelessness, and you will experience isolation. But isolation is a gift, and
Hmm.
that awareness that even the isolation and the sleeping on a park bench is a gift is like, okay, well, how do you take that? Well, it's because you're really alive. Like when, you know, when you're so full of life, stuff doesn't hurt you the same way. Like think about it when you're like not
Mm.
full of life and you're really cold, right? And you just need like sweaters and everything's cold and clammy and it just doesn't feel good. And then think of a time when you were like on fire and it's like freezing cold out, but you don't need a jacket. Nothing's phasing you. You feel like you can jump from rooftop to rooftop. You're just on fire. It's like that is where you are when you're answering your soul's calling, is you are a mind and heart on fire, and you're just like nothing phases you, nothing bothers you, and what you're willing to endure to get to answer that call is so much greater than you think, because it's not about comfort anymore. Like comfort doesn't matter to you, pain and pleasure doesn't matter to you, because joy so fills your heart and soul that that is what's carrying the day, the joy and the love, these transcendent emotions that are beyond pain and pleasure. And that's what extricates you from being worried about sleeping on a park bench, but it's also what extricates you from your addictions, because the pleasure principle, the pleasure of eating too much or indulging in this, that, or the other thing is what keeps you pinned down to a very terrestrial life, that keeps you
Mm.
stuck where you are because you're addicted to avoiding pain and indulging in pleasure. But once you finally answer that transcendent calling, those two things don't fucking matter anymore. You're just beyond that. And that means the world can't control you, and the world can't keep you down, and other people can't control you, and they can't keep you down. And I think that's what the crucifixion is all about. And the person who spends 40 years in jail based on their principles, or is willing to be, you know, shot down with a fire hose or rubber bullets or real bullets, because this, like, there is this inner fire, this inner calling that says, fuck whatever the shit is out there. I am answering this call, and is more important to me than any kind of bodily pain or pleasure.
Boom, drop the mic, Garrett. It's over.
Boom.
Done. I love it. So let's all
Yeah.
go be homeless. And I think that's a good plan. I mean,
Well,
hashtag homeless challenge.
uh,
No,
no, I mean,
no.
that, you know, that's kind of like the trouble with it all is it's aestheticism becomes the thing. So some people get this message, but they get like the first half of the message, which is like, oh, right. If we're really spiritual, we need to deny ourselves all these things. And they're like, you see all these aesthetic traditions and aesthetic spiritual paths, if you will, that are like, you can't eat any of these things. You can't indulge in any of these things. No sex for you. You know, you got to go swear to a life of celibacy and poverty and live on the top of a mountain or whatever the fuck it is. It's like, nah, that's not it, because now you're making that shit too important again. You know, like the whole point of transcending the pain and pleasure is like, you've
Mm.
transcended it. It doesn't matter. So whether you're sitting in a fucking, you know, hole in the wall, you haven't eaten in 3 days, like, you know, everybody would be like, this is the worst existence. You don't care because like you're working your passion. But that doesn't, whether you're there or whether you're in a penthouse apartment with all the luxury of the world around you, like none of that stuff is sucking you in either. It's like
Hmm.
you could be in either place and you just don't give a fuck. And
Yeah, I
those
love that.
people are seen as very dangerous to the establishment, because they can't control you. They can't bribe you. They don't have anything to suck you back into the system with, because you're not seduced by all the riches, but you're also like, you don't want to be seduced by this theory of asceticism where you need to make yourself so weak and so meek and so focused on avoiding all of the temptations of the world. Like, if you're focused on avoiding the temptations of the world, you're focused on the world. You're not transcending. So it's like, if you really want to focus on heaven, that shit just don't matter. So whether you jump into, you jump on a beat up bicycle to get where you're going, or jump in a Lambo to get where you're going, you don't care as long as you get where you're going, and have that kind of freedom and that non-attachment to the physical world. That's kind of what A Course in Miracles is all about. And that, I think, is very much like, where you want to be.
Love it. I think that's great. Thank you for squashing that, by the way. I think that was really good clarification.
Yeah. Okay. So what's next in our on our list here? We got about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like everyone's going back and forth about homelessness, actually. Like, Nikayla was the one who I think originally presented the question, and then based on everything you're saying, whatever she's saying, I wouldn't recommend it, speaking from experience, but I like the idea that I can use it as a building block. I think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's, it's not, we don't want to get tied up in the form of things. The safe space until they are ready. Fuck 40 by good. I don't understand what Michelle said, but maybe you can decipher it. So I think that's the problem that we all get stuck in, is we are very distracted by our physical reality. Obviously, we're like experiencing this physical reality in a very visceral way, but it's the transcendent reality that really is the home of our calling. That is the conduit of our calling, is the transcendent reality. And to get to that transcendent reality, you have to sort of de-blind yourself. If you are consumed with pain, agony, things of that sort, it's very hard to transcend, but you can do it. It's probably easier than if you're consumed with pleasure, because pleasure is so seductive. You really want to focus on the pleasure, whereas the pain is sort of counter-seductive. Obviously, you're trying to find some escape from that pain, but in either of those situations, it's very hard to experience transcendence. But when you can get to a place of stillness and go beyond the pain and the pleasure, it's like, that is where the magic happens. I think, the starving artist is an archetype or a cliche for a reason, and that's because the artist who is really consumed with their transcendent vision, their creative calling, and manifesting that, doesn't care about what they're eating or how they're living or where they're working or any of that stuff. Like, all that shit can go by the wayside while they're creating their art. At the same time, I wouldn't go, over romanticizing being broke and hungry and homeless and all that, because it sucks. And and just surviving becomes a huge distraction. So it's like, really what you want to do is get to a place where surviving is no longer a distraction. Someone talked about, we're not priests here or something of that sort. Well, or monks. It's like, if you went and joined a monastery, became a priest, one of the things the church did do for these people is say, okay, look at, paying the bills and worrying about your own survival are hugely distracting. You're going to swear to a life of poverty, but in exchange for that, you will be taken care of and have all of your needs met, these physical needs. And so it's like, now you can just focus entirely on God, right? Or, molesting children. You pick. And I'm saying that like facetiously, but it's kind of like, just because you don't have those distractions, it's like, they say like laziness or something like that. Idleness is the devil's playground. So that could be the other problem, is like, okay, you give people who are supposed to be devoted to God no worries, no concerns for their livelihood and stuff, and no real impetus to have to do hard work, then, there is that idleness that can become the devil's playground and convert maybe even well-meaning priests into getting distracted by pleasurable opportunities, which may not be, pedophilia or molestation. It could just be, running off with the lonely housewives whose husbands are away or whatever. Like, it could just be something that is not really hurting anybody, or maybe it is, but it's like, at the same time, it's a distraction. So where you want to get is where your work is not a distraction, where your survival is not a distraction, but at the same time where you are fully engaged in the world in a way where you can start be manifesting those miracles, where you aren't idle. Like, you can't let yourself become idle. That's the other issue, is like that, this creativity is evoked by working. Oh, so this is good. This is important. When you want to do something creative, often, and I've done this so many times, you're like, okay, I'll just wait for the inspiration. It's like, okay, I have this whole music studio set up. I love making music, but I really don't have any inspiration to any song or anything that I really want to make right now. So I'll wait until I have that before getting down the studio and spending time there. Wrong. Because you know what? Nothing gets made that way. What you do is you go down and spend time in your studio, in your creative realm, and you start working, you start moving, and that energy and motion creates that emotion and that creative momentum. And then that's something happens that sparks your creativity, that reminds you of the heavenly realm. And then you're like, whoa, and you just start channeling that. And that's where you want to be. But you don't get there unless you're already in motion, unless you're already kind of doing it. Or maybe from a dream. But even from the dream, it's like you got to wake up, transcribe what you got in the dream, get it out of your mind and into some note or form that you can kind of remember it by. And then you still got to work on it. I have so many songs that were given to me that I've stolen from people in my dreams. It's like there's some great bands in my dreams, and I've stolen like albums worth of music from them. And then I haven't done the work to turn those into complete works that I could give to the world. Like, that's a problem. That's I don't know. That's me not fully giving myself to the calling.
Oh, Garrett, the calling police are coming for you, boo.
Yeah, get in line.
Oh my goodness. All right. So Garrett, do you have any closing thoughts on the subject for all of us and our peeps? By the way, actually, maybe before we go there, I wanted to say Becky had a good point here. She said, we still need to live in this 3D reality, but just don't live for it. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. Live in this world, but be in this world, but not of it. So she's right on with that. So you have to just manage your shit in this 3D reality. And if you're not, that's an indication that you're trying to avoid it as opposed to transcend it. So like, transcending means you fundamentally have your shit together on this level, but you're able to take it to this higher level. That's awesome. But if you try to take it to this higher level, but you're tripping up on this lower level, you're not really transcending it. You're trying to avoid it. And that's a kind of denial that doesn't work. That means you really don't. There's something in you that is still fucked up around the 3D level and not letting you transcend, not letting you go to the higher level. That's why you're tripping up over it. So maybe you are trying to avoid doing that work you need to do, or that paperwork you need to do, or whatever. And in that avoidance, you're like, ooh, but I'll go like write a song. And that's kind of great, except that 3D stuff catches up with you and slaps you across the face sometimes. And that's because it's like, no, dude, you don't get to just like flit away. You have to you have to be operating on all levels at once. And if you are, and you're standing strong and you're sort of grounded in that, then what you're creating has much more of the chance of being seen through at the end of the day.
Lily says, hello, I'm 14 and I've been working on creating my own animated series for 6 years. My goal is to spread an important message to all, but I've not talked about it in fear of someone stealing my idea.
Ah, the old stealing the idea fear. That is, I think, one of the opposition's biggest ploys for the creative one. It's like, you have this creative inspiration. You're worried someone's going to steal your idea because it's such a beautiful idea. What you don't realize is dozens of people around the world have a very similar, if not exactly the same idea as you. And so it's not about who's going to steal your idea. It's about who's going to get that idea out in front of everybody as quickly and as effectively as possible. So let me tell you something. Back in the early 90s, I had this recurrent vision of a sci-fi movie where everybody would put on these 3D, you know, what do you call it? Virtual reality headsets, and they were chained into these balls where they could run on or whatever, but they like it made it so they were completely immersed in virtual reality, and they would eventually forget that they were in virtual reality, and because unplugging them would create such a shock it would kill them, the only way to get them out of this virtual reality was to send one more in who would remember that they're in virtual reality and go through this heroic experience of self-sacrifice and become this Christ figure that basically releases everyone from this virtual reality.
Stop it, Garrett.
Such a cool movie.
What?
So like this was like this big creative dream I had when I was 14, right? And it lasted till I was like 18 or 19 or whenever The Matrix came out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, fuck. and the thing is, like, they figured out, like, I didn't figure out that if you stick a little thing in the back of your head, you can short circuit the whole nervous system. You don't have to have their bodies moving and able to, like, interface with the world. Like, I had this idea that they're running on these balls and, you know, and that's like all this stuff to, like, there's mechanical stuff around their bodies to allow their bodies to interact with this fake world. The Wachowski brothers figured out you just stick a thing in the back of their head and then they could just lay motionless in a chair or in a pod somewhere, and that does it. And they figured out this artificial intelligence would be the one that immersed everybody in. So they figured out all these other pieces of the story that were like way better than what I'd figured out. And why? Because they focused on it, because they actually did the work. They didn't just dream about it and tell their friends the cool story that they're going to do someday. They actually got down to business, wrote the fucking script, had a comic strip artist like illustrate the entire thing, and then took that to a movie studio and said, this is the fucking thing we want to make. And it was so badass that the movie studio was like, yeah, and gave these brothers like crazy money to make The Matrix. Now, did I do any of that? No. Did I have that idea like years possibly ahead of when they did? Probably. But that's the funny thing about these types of inspirations. And so if you've got this beautiful thing, this beautiful inspiration to create, and you've been working on it for 6 years, honey, you got to get it out soon.
Yes,
because guess what?
girlfriend.
Somebody is going to put something out so similar to it, you're going to be like, fuck. I can't put this out because everyone's just going to think I'm copying them, right? So to just get it out, let someone steal your idea. And here's the way to let someone steal your idea. Put it out on YouTube. Put it out on YouTube, because the cool thing about that, and that's why I kind of like doing these talks now live, is because I'm sharing ideas that I also feel like people are going to steal and take credit for. And I've already shared dozens of ideas that people took credit for and I feel like stole from me. And you know, they'll go give a TED talk on the fucking thing that I, you know, had been saying for years, you know, but then they get all the credit for it. Well, guess what? If you put it out on YouTube or something that's like got a timestamp on it, at least you can say to yourself and other people, yeah, but look, my timestamp is 2018. They came out with it in 2020. So who really came up with it first? Boom!
My name is Lily, bitches. All right. So we do have to close up. I want to read Marge's comment because it was so sweet. She said, I love this program. Every week, I feel like you guys are speaking to me directly on so many specifics. Thank you for being you and for being here for us. Marge, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Seriously. Mwah.
Answer your calling before somebody else does. Answer your calling before somebody else does. And even if they do beat you to it, jump on that next wave. Don't get hung up on that last calling. You're getting a phone call every quarter. Every few months, you're probably getting a new call. And that new calling is there. It's ready for you. Pick the one you're ready to commit to. Jump on that wave. Paddle as hard as you can. I think there's a video that I made. There is a video I made. I don't know if we'll be able to get it for you. Maybe I'll throw it in the comments. But it's like catch your wave. and it's on one of my YouTube channels early on. There's a surfer on it, but it's all about like the difficulty of catching that wave, but then the miraculous victory that you experience when you finally do paddle hard enough and catch your wave. It's worth it. And you will ride the light into a heavenly existence and experience that boon if you finally sacrifice all the other shit in your life so that you do catch that wave. Go for it. Answer your calling. Till next week.
Bye.